Picture this. A 37-year-old legend moves in the biggest trade in history, inks a $90 million extension, carries his squad with 26 points a night, then goes down hard diving for a ball in practice right before the postseason tips off. Kevin Durant and the Rockets have endured an absolute roller coaster of a season in recent memory. Now, the internet is blowing up over what followed. You and I need to break down everything that went down between KD and Houston. On Wednesday, April 16th, 2026, 3 days before the Rockets were scheduled to start their series against the Los Angeles Lakers, superstar Kevin Durant collided with a teammate during a run. According to reports, Durant went down hard while diving for a stray ball and hitting a teammate. That was it. No massive crash, no defender taking his legs out. Just a basic drill gone south. Suddenly, Durant is on the official injury report Friday with a bruised knee during their week off. When that news first hit the wire, the Rockets were cautiously optimistic. KD was initially listed as questionable, and ESPN claimed the front office hoped this practice injury would not ruin the series. But that hope evaporated fast. Less than 90 minutes before tip-off against the Lakers in Game 1 on Saturday, the star forward was officially ruled out due to that nagging practice injury. He actually attempted his full pregame routine at Crypto.com Arena. Despite KD attempting his usual warm-up on the court inside Crypto.com Arena, he failed. He just could not go. Head coach Ime Udoka gave us the grim details on the injury. A normal bump is one thing, but this was right above the knee in that tender patellar area. The patellar tendon is just too tender. Forget pain tolerance, his actual movement is restricted now. Limited movement is the real issue. Hit subscribe for updates. This timing and context are just brutal. Inside that locker room, the Rockets had to prep for life without Durant. Rare for this season. He only missed 4 games all year, with just 1 being injury-related. This was only his 5th absence in Houston. Talk about worst-case scenarios for this Rockets organization. Durant was clearly heated about the knee injury that forced him to watch the loss to LA. Reporters on the scene caught his frustration during Saturday warm-ups. Observers noted he was stiff, and sources watching his routine said his anger was obvious. He was absolutely losing it over the timing. His teammates certainly felt that void immediately. Jabari Smith Jr. told the media, quote, "It is not like him to be off the court. He was not going through his usual routine, so we knew he might sit after missing that practice. We were in the dark, folks. You and I know these day-by-day situations are always the toughest to handle. We had to take care of business, but they failed tonight." At 37, Durant averaged a massive 26 points. Houston felt every single bit of his absence in that tough 107-98 loss in LA. Without their top gun on the floor, the Houston offense basically flatlined in devastating fashion. They dropped Game 1 after the late scratch, and that offensive gap was massive. Houston did not have a single 20-point scorer, shot just 37%, and really struggled to find the shot-making stability that KD usually provides. The box score is a nightmare. Houston went 35 for 93 from the floor. Tari Eason went 7 for 7, but he was the only one efficient out there. Thompson, Smith, Shepard, and Alperen Sengun combined for a shooting disaster. And remember, this all happened against a Lakers squad that was also missing their own key star. This should have evened the odds since Luka Doncic and Austin Reeves were out. Los Angeles was missing their 2 best bucket getters, and they still took Houston down. Doncic and Reeves account for nearly 57 points a game. Without Durant on the court Saturday, this 2026 squad looked like the struggling 2025 version. They were deers in the headlights against a team led by the legendary and most experienced veteran, LeBron James. That comparison hurts. Before you go, hit subscribe. Let's discuss why they made this trade initially. So let's talk about why Durant was in Houston in the first place. The Rockets went all in to get him in a massive 7-team trade this past offseason. It all came after a Game 7 loss to the Warriors showed that Houston was exciting, sure, but way too inexperienced. They desperately needed a veteran scorer. Without Durant, Jabari Smith admitted what we were all thinking. "You miss it," Smith said, talking about Durant's absence. "We still got open looks. We still got what we wanted. When you're missing Kevin Durant, you're going to miss a lot." He added, "We missed him, but we still could have been a lot better." Coach Udoka, though, seemed optimistic after the loss, telling reporters he thought this would be just a 1-game absence. In fact, after ruling Durant out, Ime Udoka was clear he hoped it was a 1-game thing. Udoka specified that Durant's return would depend more on his mobility than simply his ability to play through pain. But the update we got before Game 2 wasn't exactly a full green light. Here's the situation. Rockets star Kevin Durant only participated in about half of the team's practice on Monday, and he's now a game-time decision for Tuesday. That's according to coach Ime Udoka. Shams Charania reported that Kevin Durant's status for Game 2 is very much up in the air. My understanding is Kevin Durant is dealing with a deep bruise in his right patellar tendon. The Rockets, they're optimistic that Kevin Durant is going to be able to return as soon as Game 2, but it remains to be seen. Then, ESPN's Brian Windhorst dropped a bombshell that had every Rockets fan hitting the panic button. On First Take, Windhorst called the situation the most important story of the entire first weekend of the NBA playoffs, and what made his analysis hit so hard was the reasoning behind it. Durant is not typically a player who sits out a playoff game unless something is genuinely bothering him. That is why this is more than a routine injury report item for Houston. Look, to grasp the weight of Durant's absence, you have to remember what it took to even get him on this team. On July 6th, 2025, Durant was traded to the Houston Rockets in a 7-team trade, which is the largest in the history of the league. The sheer scope of the deal was incredible. The moves leading up to Kevin Durant's trade to Houston became the very first 7-team deal in NBA history, a ridiculously complex transaction. All told, the deal involved the Rockets, Hawks, Nets, Golden State Warriors, Lakers, Timberwolves, and the Phoenix Suns. You had 6 players moving: Durant, Jalen Green, Dillon Brooks, Clint Capella, David Roddy, and Daquan Plowden, plus 1 first-round draft pick and 12 second-round picks. Houston gave up a massive haul to Phoenix. The league's biggest trade finally went through, with the centerpiece, Kevin Durant joining the Houston Rockets in exchange for Jalen Green, Dillon Brooks, and a whole bunch of other assets. With 7 different teams and 13 players involved, the motivation was crystal clear. In their first-round playoff loss in 7 games to the Warriors, the Houston Rockets offense was a massive problem. Their defense was solid enough to keep them in every single game, but they simply did not have the offensive firepower to win the series. Houston averaged just 104 points, and that number was inflated by a 131-point outlier in Game 5. To win a title, the Rockets needed a scorer. Now, Durant's exit from Phoenix happened after a really disappointing stretch with the Suns. His leaving the Suns was frankly expected and ended a frustrating 2.5 years out in the desert. Durant never found any consistent team success, even though he was part of a big 3 with Devin Booker and Bradley Beal. His last season in Phoenix actually ended with an ankle injury that put him on the shelf for the rest of the year. On March 30th, playing against these same Houston Rockets, Durant left the game in the third quarter with that ankle injury and didn't return. The Suns got blown out 148-109. The injury sidelined him for the rest of the season, and the Suns went 1-6 in their final 7 games, finishing 11th in the West and missing the postseason completely. And when the trade was finalized, Durant found out in the most public way possible. Fans learned about the news while he was live on stage in New York at Fanatics Fest. And when they started reacting, a huge smile spread across his face. "We're going to see," Durant said from the stage. He later followed up on social media. With the trade official, Durant went to X to talk about his time with the Suns and his future in Houston. "My time in Phoenix has come to an end. All these stops along the journey have really impacted me in a positive way. I appreciate all the quick interactions with everybody, from support staff to teammates, distant cousins. It's all a family that I'm grateful to be a part of no matter what." As you can imagine, Houston's front office was ecstatic. Kevin impacts the game on both ends of the court. One of the most efficient scorers in the history of basketball. That's from Rockets GM Raphael Stone. Coach Udoka backed him up, saying, "I know he's the type of competitor who fits with what we've been building," and the commitment was a two-way street. Durant, who arrived in that blockbuster trade, didn't waste any time. He signed a 2-year extension, locking him in with Houston through the 2027-2028 season. Durant himself said he was all in. The whole plan was to build with this group for the long haul. And you know what? His teammates saw him putting his money where his mouth was. Alperen Sengun was absolutely thrilled to hear Durant was staying long-term, and he pointed out that KD taking less money meant everything. "We see how bad he wants to play, how bad he wants to win," Sengun said. "I saw he took a pay cut too, and that's important. So you have the historic trade, the extension, and all this hype, which makes what happened next just so much more painful. Look, the knee injury was a huge crisis, but it didn't just pop up out of nowhere. The 2025-2026 season had already been shaken by a major controversy, one that some insiders believe completely shattered the team's chemistry. It was February when reports surfaced that Durant was using a burner account to call out his own Rockets teammates. The account with the handle GetHigher77 on X was dropping comments that were quickly traced back to him. Now, it was never officially confirmed, but the account's intense focus on his former teammates only fueled the fire that it had to be him. And these allegations dropped right during All-Star weekend. The details in those supposed messages, absolutely explosive. The account was reportedly tearing into Houston players Jabari Smith Jr. and Alperen Sengun, saying Sengun struggles with his shot and defense while also questioning Smith's scoring and defensive skills. It didn't stop there. The account also allegedly took shots at former teammates Devin Booker and Kyrie Irving. This wasn't exactly new territory for Durant. Remember back in 2017 when he got caught? He later admitted in 2019 that he used burner account just to interact with friends on the quiet. Then in 2020, on the All the Smoke podcast, he doubled down, flat out saying, I'm still going to do the burner thing. I'm still going to do that. So naturally, theories about other burner accounts fired up again in 2026 when an account critical of his Rockets teammates seemed to fit his pattern, though again, no hard proof ever came out. So when he was finally asked about it directly after the All-Star break, Durant basically sidestepped the whole thing. I know you've got to ask these questions, he said, but I'm not here to get into Twitter. Nonsense. I'm here to focus on the season. My teammates know what it is. They've been locked in all season, he claimed, but according to almost everyone watching, the damage was already done. Former NBA player Antonio Daniels didn't pull any punches on SiriusXM NBA radio. When you see this Houston Rockets team, you can see they're fractured, Daniels said. I told you this when the Kevin Durant thing happened. The fact that KD never shut it down. The fact that he didn't just say, it wasn't me. I would not say that about my teammates. That silence, it causes huge issues inside a locker room. And his former Thunder teammate Kendrick Perkins, he saw it the exact same way. Perkins claimed he could see the locker room drama playing out ever since the story broke. I see a disconnect in this organization, he said. I'm starting to think I don't see a lot of high fives, chest bumping. Are they over the allegations of the burner account, the KD burner account? Are they over these allegations? Because he pointed out, since that All-Star break, this team just hasn't been clicking, and the numbers back that up completely. Before the All-Star break, the Houston Rockets were flying high with a 33-20 record and an offensive rating of 117, sixth best in the entire NBA. But after the break, the team stumbled, going 8-5, while their offensive rating dropped to 114.1, plummeting them to 16th in the league, and Houston's trademark defense also took a hit. Before the break, their defensive rating was 112, fifth in the NBA. Afterwards, it slipped to 113.1, dropping them all the way to 14th. The Rockets went from a top 3 seed in the West down to the 5th seed. So by the time the playoffs rolled around, a team once pegged as a title contender was now limping into the postseason, not just with injuries, but with what looked like a fractured soul. And now, with their star player barely able to move on a battered knee, everything this franchise was building toward was hanging by a razor-thin thread, a body that's seen war. And the truth about that, waived rumor, the knee contusion Durant picked up in practice might seem small on paper. But for a player whose body has 18 NBA seasons worth of scars, every new injury just echoes louder. You see, Durant's injury file reads like a soldier's journal. Before the Achilles, NBA fans were terrified about Durant's foot and if it would cut his career short. Back in October of 2014, it was decided Durant needed surgery for a Jones fracture in his right foot. This was the third operation on that same foot in just 6 months. And then, the injury that almost took it all away. While with the Golden State Warriors, star Kevin Durant had surgery for a completely ruptured right Achilles tendon. He revealed just how bad it was 2 days after it happened in Game 5 of the 2019 NBA Finals. Coming back after a month out with a calf strain, Durant himself believed his career could have been over. When he tore his Achilles in those finals, he truly thought his playing days might be finished. He said, "That's when I knew. I'm like, I probably won't go back to the Bay again. It's 20,000 people in there and I heard a pop." So I'm like, oh my gosh. And my whole basketball career flashed before my eyes. The road back to the court was extraordinarily difficult. But right away, Durant struck his physical therapist as different. It was incredible, Barr said. From day one, he was just completely focused and determined to get back. It took 18 long months before he stepped on the court again. He sat out the entire 2019-20 season. Look, Achilles tears have a nasty habit of splitting careers in two. the player before and the player after. That gap is often tragically wide, but Kevin Durant blew every single statistical expectation out of the water. The two-time Finals MVP has taken his lumps, but his return from that Achilles tear specifically makes him an absolute anomaly among superstars. According to 538, players are almost never the same after an Achilles tear, with nearly every single one showing a big drop in their overall efficiency ratings. Stars like Kobe Bryant, Rudy Gay, and others all saw their production decline, and understandably so. Yet, Durant's return was nothing short of a miracle. He came back to the game and was still one of the most efficient scorers in all of basketball. Durant came into this season averaging 26 points, 5.5 rebounds, and 4.8 assists, shooting 52% from the field and 41% from deep. He played 2,840 minutes this season, his most since 2014. At 37 years old, the man was playing more than he had in a decade, and that's exactly what makes this latest injury so gut-wrenching. Durant was playing his best, most consistent ball since before he ever tore that Achilles. He was durable, efficient, and there every single night for a young Houston team that desperately needed his leadership. And then a loose ball in practice snatched it all away at the absolute worst possible time. Now, let's talk about the claim that sent the internet into a meltdown. A post started making the rounds on X from an account called NB Centel that said, breaking, the Houston Rockets have waived Kevin Durant. That post got almost 2 million views. But here's what was really going on. That's just not true. Durant is not being waived by the Rockets. While many people know it's a parody account, it still caused a ton of confusion among users on X. A simple fact check completely debunked the whole viral post. The entire thing came from a fake post, engineered for clicks and chaos, not for facts. The NB Centel account, notice the spelling, Centel, is a famous parody page. This whole mess really highlights a much bigger problem, like the huge gap between what gets social media engagement and what is actually verified news. In an online world where fake posts can spread just as fast as real ones, fans really have to rely on credible sources before believing some wild headline. So, let's be clear. Kevin Durant has not been waived. Kevin Durant is and will be a Houston Rocket. He signed a $90 million extension just a few months ago. He's dealing with a knee contusion. It's painful, it's frustrating, and the timing is brutal, but there is no structural damage, and the Rockets are staying cautiously optimistic about his return. What is truly heartbreaking is just the sheer weight of this moment. A generational talent who has fought his way back from a career-ending Achilles tear, multiple foot fractures, and the mental grind of team hopping and constant public criticism. A guy who chose to be in Houston, who took less money to be there, who logged more minutes than he had in 10 years, was taken out by a loose ball. He was forced to sit in that arena, watching his young teammates get crushed, looking completely devastated, unable to do the one thing he does better than almost anyone in history: put a basketball in the hoop. Acquired in the offseason, Kevin Durant instantly became the sun in Houston's offensive solar system, especially with Fred VanVleet sidelined by that devastating ACL injury. All the pressure shifted to Durant as the lone offensive weapon. Everything ran through him and Alperen Sengun. The Rockets didn't just want him, they completely rebuilt this franchise for him. And in their biggest moment, he was helpless in a suit on the bench. Will KD be back for Game 2? And can the Rockets even stay alive that long without him? We just don't know yet. The imaging showed no structural damage to Durant's knee, which is the only good news here. But in the postseason, timing is everything. And for Kevin Durant and the Houston Rockets, the clock is ticking, and this timing is an absolute disaster. The wave story was fake news. This playoff heartbreak, all too real.